Yeah, it's a bit. I think we've done it for the last maybe 4 May gatherings that we had. That at the last session that we have is for those people who have some interest in how the KFA is working and what we're doing and how we're thinking. And so this session is dedicated to that, just to inform you, to update you. A lot of things have been already published in our various e-newsletters and our foundation focus and the bulletin. So you might have read on our website. And how the format is going to be, I will say a few things that I think are maybe of interest, hopefully of interest. I will see if I've seen somebody nodding off, I will change the subject. And then I will actually, almost like interactively, like Corey is archives, publications, Leia is doing social media and dissemination plan, and Francisco is the director of the center. So I will actually try to bring out the information from them that I think you'll be interested to hear. And you know, I mean, because all the way in the beginning, 2 days ago, and it's not all the way in the beginning, but 2 days ago when I opened, I said, well, you know, the people who are operating do the day-to-day operation of the KFA, this is also their interest. We're not just functionaries, and that is also brought into how we work and how we set the space and how we organize and how we set priorities. Of course, it's important to know also that how the organization works. You have a board of trustees. The several trustees are sitting here in the space, and they are signing off or responsible for the overall strategic plan, of course, and make sure that everything falls within the mission and the mandate. And so I want to talk a little bit more about that also. And then you have myself as executive director, then you have various directors that we have in the place, Francisco for the center, Corey is, of course, publications and marketing, and not marketing, communication, publications and archives, but he's also, because we have expanded, if you followed our e-newsletter, we have expanded, there's a new center coming up, which I hope to talk more about, and Leia's director of communications. And then there's various other staff, also my wife, my partner, she's responsible for the retreat, but she cannot be here, of course, but so I will, others will speak on on the work of the retreat particularly. And also, I just try to anticipate, just to imagine the kind of questions that you might have, or the kind of questions that are recurring over the years. And the one question that always comes up, how can there be a Krishnamurti organization? Well, Krishnamurti was against organizations. And you know, in 29 he was pretty clear about it, that there's no organization that can lead you to truth. That's why we always have the clause, there's nobody in the organization or in the board or something is pretending that they know what Krishnamurti says. And the organization is also not operating. It's really a service that we're offering for the world. I mean, now we're in the digital realms, so much in the digital realm. The work is now everything we do is worldwide. I mean, personally, because I travel to China often, so even while we're here sitting, I've been feeding the Chinese social media with some of the things that we're doing here, because I know there's a lot of interest. So, and we will talk about it more. So that's the first disclaimer. Krishnamurti was against spiritual organizations, because he was not against anything, but he said no spiritual organization can bring you to truth. He was very adamant about that. But he did take the trouble to organize this foundation with two main parts of the mission, and that's a little bit expanded also, but to disseminate the teachings, and dissemination is, of course, a very wide term, which preserve the teachings and to run schools and centers. That's more or less exactly the mandate that we have, and that's exactly what we're doing. Now, within that, of course, there's quite a bit of scope. You know, these things can be interpreted in many different ways, and you can see that, the video that you saw a little bit before that Lea was presenting, like, not all the Krishnamurti organizations are all the same. They function also a little bit different. They have different emphasis. Like it's also really funny because, like, there's an English foundation, there's an Indian foundation, as you will, and there's a Spanish foundation. And Francisco and we have been working for the English foundation also for about 10 years, and so we are multicultural as far as that's concerned. But the American situation is exactly. Has a different interpretation. It's more like, I sometimes jokingly say in India it's more the man, in England it's more the text, and in America it's more the people. Roughly, you know. So these kind of videos will not easily come from England at the moment, although things are shifting, of course. Which is so. I'm not saying that in order to say that there's anything good or bad, but I'm just saying that creatively. And I really mean it creatively. There are different efforts being made to disseminate Krishnamurti's teachings, and certain things that are happening here cannot happen somewhere else because the focus is just different. So that's so dissemination, and you have preservation. And then as you know, we're a non-profit organization. Run upon income that we generate from our publications, from our programs, and the school, of course, from tuition, and also we have been people donate to our organization. Many people here and who are here now have donated to this organization, and that's how we operate and how we fund the non-profit. And I feel. I'm here. I came in 2011 here. So before that, I was 10 years in England. In 2011, we made a tremendous journey since then. I don't know if you've been at the East Side, at the center in the East Side. The amount of work that has been done in order to beautify the place and to change the place, and also here at the school, of course, a phenomenal work has been happening on the maintenance and the improvement of this place. And maybe also a detail that might interest you is that on the east side we have some plans also for building and expanding, which we'll talk when we speak with Francisco more. But Krishnamurti is now an historic figure, you know, besides the fact of people like you who probably really have an interest in the teachings. But for California, Krishnamurti is a very relevant person who has contributed to the history, the main movement of the history here, and it's also acknowledged as that. And also in Ojai, of course, Krishnamurti was a main or an important figure who brought like the cultural and the intellectual environment here, and many people moved to Ojai in order to be close to that and to take part in that. So, and the center here not so much yet, but the center on the east end. Is several of the buildings are now historic, and we have to treat them from an historic perspective. And when we build, we have to be very careful. So that's another dimension of the work. So it's not that we can do anything we like. Everything is with a cultural board and all that. So it's maybe a component that might interest you. That also means maybe that can reassure you that there are many checks and balances, and that there's lots of care for the legacy of the place, the both places, from the county, and that because I think I rightly assume that most of you really care also about what's happening here in Ojai, because Krishnamurti is dear to your heart. So that's the starting point, I feel, and So in sequence, I would like to go over the first I feel there's some hierarchy, although I'm not allowed to say that, but there's some hierarchy, because what would you, what is of the highest importance, right? I mean, that these teachings are preserved for future generations, and they need to be preserved for. Krishnamurti himself said many times, right? We have to make sure. At the moment, maybe you don't understand, but somebody might come who might get it. You know, he would. I mean, like almost like an insult in some of the talks, he would say it to people. He would say, well, probably none of you know, but somebody will know, find out at a certain point, understand. So it's quite I mean, if you would sit in that audience, you would probably feel quite upset, I guess. Hopefully not, but but that's an important aspect, right? So that a very important focus of the foundation, and as I will talk to Corey more, you will see that is how do we do that? How do we ensure that it will be there in hundreds, thousands of years? So that's the first thing, maybe that Corey, how do you do it?
Yeah. So just as to give a little overview because many people may not understand, the Krishnamurti archive is really an international cooperative effort. There are 3 locations, archival locations, one of which is here in Ojai at the East End, another in England at the Krishnamurti Foundation Trust, and then one in Chennai in India. So the original materials, which are all of the recordings throughout his entire life, are organized in these different archives. An interesting point about our archives is that we are essentially an oral history archive, and one that represents an author whose life transpired during the evolution of recording technologies. So we have talks that exist in original form only via stenographer's notes. We have even early silver wire recordings, all the way up to color video. So not only do we preserve those originals, but as time has progressed and new recording media has come out, we've transferred the originals onto newer updated media, and then of course more recently in the past 20 years digitizing all of the collection. So most of the teachings related material at this point has been digitized in one way or another. However, we essentially just finished digitizing the original stenographer's notes. It was about 37,000 sheets of paper that are now digitized and have now been printed onto microfilm. So those scans now exist in film also. So there's a branch of preserving and maintaining originals, and then also digitizing so that you can transfer the original material onto more stable media that will last a longer period. So in a sense, that's the biggest eye view of the work of the never-ending work of an archive. And so all of this work is, it also depends on what media is where. We have the digital server is one of the bigger responsibilities of the Ojai archive because it's housed here in Ojai. So not only are we dealing with the physical collection, but we're also dealing with the digital collection and the security of the digital collection, because the server is accessed internationally by the archivists that share with me in the work of cataloging and organizing the database and keeping all the digital materials organized. So if you have specific questions, maybe I could answer them too.
A good place? Okay, good. Just for you to elaborate, and I can just suggest things. And because we have many collections. So like you said, teachings material, but the archives consist also of many non-teaching
Right.
material. So maybe you want to say something about that, because and the volume of that.
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah, so I mean that's a good point. We, the teachings material is the first priority of the archives, but then we have large collections of interviews of people that lived with, worked with, and were friends with Krishnamurti when he was alive. We keep copies of any and all books and publications that make reference to Krishnamurti, dissertations and writings, these sorts of things. We're currently working on digitizing all of the correspondences to and from Krishnamurti that we have on record, which also end up containing nice sort of teachings material themselves. So as a secondary collection, it still is incredibly valuable. And often Krishnamurti's direct responses to people's questions can be very touching.
Yeah, so maybe from here we can move towards the other part of your work, which is publications.
Yeah.
And if you look at the archives, and there's a strong relationship between archives and publication, because the work originates in the archives and then gets prepared for publication, edited, whatever, what have you. So how much, and just for people to get a sense, how much of the archives, of the teaching material, do you think has been published, or how much unpublished material do we have, as far as published in books?
Yeah, it's an interesting question about publication, because now that we have such a strong online presence and we share a YouTube channel internationally, publications is an interesting question, because many talks and recordings are published or available in audio and video, but may not appear in book form. So it's an interesting question in that sense. It's hard to, I guess, put a percentage on what is and isn't published in that sense in book form. But we have, I think, at least 75 languages that Krishnamurti's work has been translated into. And the Krishnamurti Foundation in England is working on the verification process of transcripts. So I'm backing up, because I'm also giving you a little bit into the process that happens. So from moving from recordings to transcripts, and then those transcripts edited into publications. It looked like you wanted to stop me.
Because we're on publication, and try to establish to give people a sense of how much we have. Yeah. And I remember recently you doing a list of all the book publications that we had, and I think there's, in English language, if you say with including the material that originates from India, there's over 100 books published.
Yeah.
And then that doesn't even list all the collected work separately. It will go over 120 books probably.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's 120 Krishnamurti books being published, book titles. So you might have read one or two books, but there are 100. You're missing another 100. Let me put it that.
Yes. Yes, and the point there being that does not exhaust the archive in terms of book publication, and
it could very well be only 50%.
Yes,
that's what I'm trying to say.
Yes. Yeah. And so then on top of just the English publication, we manage the translation rights of the material, and depending on the region, some of the translations have existed for 50 plus years, and some of our relationships with publishers have existed for that amount of time also, and are consistent even today. So that's an ongoing activity, and I mean, even recently, I would say within the past few years, even given the pandemic, Krishnamurti book sales have been doing very, very well. I would say in the pandemic, exceptionally well, and we all can speculate as to why Krishnamurti books started selling very well. But I think people have an impression that everyone, because of the way media looks and appears, that everyone's moving away from books. But if our book sales are any indication, that is absolutely not the case. And that Krishnamurti books appeal to a lot of people in a lot of different languages all over the world. So we share with the English Foundation a commitment to do our best to release at least one book a year. However, it just sort of depends on our ability to compile and edit new books, which actually is a very large project when it comes to it.
What's the schedule? What is coming up? What's the next book coming up?
There's on the KFA has been working on a revised and expanded edition of a book that has been known as Social Responsibility. So this book has been released by the foundations and is currently available and published by the foundations, but we feel that it is exceedingly relevant and wanted to expand on the already very good content that it includes. And the plan is to try to get a publisher to publish it worldwide as a new edition. The shared attempt is to work on editing books that appeal to the current times and the current interests, because our sense is that Krishnamurti's work is directly relevant to the state of the world. So the better we can do at responding to that and editing books that appeal to that nature, we feel is the right way to sort of look at the broad work of the publications part of the foundation. Yeah.
Something that maybe is interesting that I wanted to see, because I kind of have an idea, but I'm not really clear in terms of what's being published in book format. What type of content is there? Because the majority is not Krishnamurti's writings. I think the majority is probably public talks and interviews, and those are the transcripts that then get edited in book format, right?
Yeah, so the majority of publications do come from compiling recordings of public talks. There are, the books of writings include his journal, commentaries on living, the notebook. Currently, the Krishnamurti Foundation Trust is working on an expanded edition of the journal, so that will include new written material. But it also should be said that there is far, far more spoken material than there is written material in the archive. And one of the only books that Krishnamurti wrote as a book is Education and Significance of Life. Otherwise, they're edited publications that were compiled afterwards to produce a book out of his teachings. And then again, the other exceptions are things like the notebook and the journal, which were never written to be publications, but later it was decided to do so. Yeah.
And can you say something just for to give people a sense of the global dissemination? Like, what are the best? Which countries are doing well as far as?
Yeah. So there's a few points I will speak to. Yeah. Book sales, but also digital publications, I think, is also good to mention. But the management of the copyright and the management of publications is split between the foundations, and so my responsibility is particular regions of the world, and one of those is China, which is a predominant force in my work. So I would say that, in some previous years, up to 40% of our book sale income would come from book sales in China. And the numbers, the sheer numbers of sales of Krishnamurti books obviously come from the number of people living in China, but it goes without saying that there is sincere interest, despite difficulties in terms of censorship and people's inability to access the material. Like Jaap was saying, there are, it's not a direct link between all of our available platforms like YouTube and all of our social media that we work on to Chinese internet. But book sales do exceptionally well, and we have publishing partners that have been strong for the duration of changes in the amount of censorship and the ability to push publications into the market for now at this point 20 years or so. We have new partners in Vietnam and a strong interest in producing audiobooks in Vietnamese. We're working with a foundation in Thailand that's doing at this point almost exclusively bilingual books. And Brazil is also very strong. We have a large publishing partner there who has a sister publisher in Portugal that we're now working with. The list goes on, but there is very strong interest. We went to the book fair in 2019 the last time. We typically try to go every year to a Frankfurt book fair and meet with publishers. We had 19 meetings prepared, and we ended up meeting with 34 publishers that were interested in publishing Krishnamurti. So the interest is still very much there, which is exciting. We don't really see any indication of that slowing down.
Just one, I think maybe interesting bit is that archivally you are looking at materials that are even longer than microfilm.
Yeah.
So maybe you want to just say...
it's a very fun and interesting thing to look at is the question of, because I forget where it was stated, but Krishnamurti at one point said that these places, the foundations, the centers, the archives should last at least 1,000 years. So that begs the question, what lasts 1,000 years? Especially media that contains information. So that is a question that we're looking at directly. And now that we have a significant portion of the material digitized, it gives us the opportunity to take advantage of new technologies. So we are doing a sort of a feasibility study with a company that can print on gold-plated nickel plates that are about the size of your cell phone, and those plates can fit about 500 pages of material that can be read via only magnification. So it removes the need for any intermediary technology to access the material, and these plates are estimated to last about 10,000 years. So these kinds of things are possible now because a laser can print a page that is smaller than a grain of sand that you can basically read if you have the right magnification. So they're fun questions to ask, and now seem to be feasible projects that we can undertake just to ensure that in the event of, catastrophic loss of technology and resources and energy, that we still have some way of accessing this work. Which, that's the goal of preservation. Yeah.
Good. So, Mark.
Yeah.
Corey, the Vatican archives have been hacked many times. They've lost original material. Now that so much of what we have is online and digitized, what are your safeguards and precautions to prevent this happening to K archives?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So we do a fair amount of duplication in terms of our digital archive. So the digital archive that is accessed day to day, I can speak about that security, which is we have a firewall that we maintain regularly, and we only have very specific access points and users that are even able to access the material, which itself are secure access points. But aside from that, we have a regular schedule of checking and duplicating and offlining the material that lives live and is accessed online. So I would imagine that at any given point, there's at least 3 copies of the entire archive at some point, and 2 of those copies do not live on the server. So, that's in a nutshell, that's the basic premise of our security, is maintaining access point security and security of the live server that the archivists use, and duplicating all of the digitized material in the event that there is any breach. We have all of the material safe and inaccessible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, one question I had was, in India we are seeing trends whereby old religious texts and even older religions like Hinduism are becoming less and less accessed by people, and they only listen to a political dialogue and take that to be the original version, which is sometimes even 180 degrees or 90 degrees away from the original. With the need for teachings like this to be more popular in India to counteract that kind of a trend, what is the experience of the archives, the publications in India?
Well, I do know. Francisco and Leah, they look at statistics, but if we of all our social media, half has been. If you look at the people who access it most, half is United States and the other half is India, probably. Yeah, it's roughly.
Yeah, there are different projects that seem to appeal to different countries. Just to give an example, there is we have a radio which is original audio of Krishnamurti being transmitted 24/7, and that one is very popular in India. And so you more or less, as Jaap said, you have the US, the majority of the audience, but immediately India is just right there. So that gives an example that seems to me.
Yeah, and what's interesting is different users in different areas tend to have different behaviors. So for example, the Indian listeners for the Krishnamurti online radio, while there tend to be more listeners from India, they listen for less amounts of time. And the listeners in the US, while there are fewer, tend to listen for longer amounts of time.
Yes. So from the preservation, I would like to go to. We went to dissemination, book publishing, and now I want to go to online dissemination, which Leah is responsible for. She's our communications director. And Leah, maybe you want to outline just the various projects that you're working on. I hear the radio, but I know there's a long list.
There's
without
a lot.
without an overwhelming statistics, but just to to give people a feeling of the amount of work that's been done, because I don't think many people know, and they might be curious. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we do have a lot of sub-projects under our dissemination plan. One of which is the Krishnamurti online radio. We have the Immeasurable podcast, and each of the sub-projects that fall under that, like the website, which is an online magazine, the YouTube channel. We have our online e-newsletters, our different websites like KFA.org, the KrishnamurtiCenter.org, the Krishnamurti portal, which is coming up soon.
Can I interrupt you, because
Sure.
I think because there are lots of names and people might not know what they stand for. So if you look at, like, if I take the core project, right, like of course we have our main website, and what do you feel is the immeasurable? What does it stand for, and what is the purpose of it? What is it? What is the target audience, or what is the vision behind it? Yes.
Yeah. So it's targeted towards a younger audience or people who may be unfamiliar with Krishnamurti's teachings. I think Francisco has said before that it's kind of like the kiddie pool of this body of work, where it seems to be more approachable for people. The immeasurable videos are shorter, maybe like 2 to 4 minutes, And, if someone has never heard of Krishnamurti before, they may be willing to spend 2 or 4 minutes rather than, watching a full public talk, which is 2 hours. So that's the immeasurable.
Yeah, because I think that's Francisco maybe can add. Yeah.
No, I was going to add that. So the immeasurable is like an umbrella project that has this mission statement, which is so the different parts is there's a website, there's a podcast, there are short videos, but they are all aimed for a young audience that is we are trying to create bridges that relate more to the content that is expressed in the teachings than the man himself or people that already know about Krishnamurti. So it's very important for us to see what is relevant for this generation, and then what can we put out there and in which format for people to feel that they resonate with it, and then they start their own investigation. So sometimes you can have a video of Krishnamurti that is an hour long and it looks retro, for somebody young, and we prefer to use something that is shorter and maybe with some different images as an entry point to the whole of the teachings. So it's important for us to have that link. So this is only a door, let's say, and social media also in a way works like that. You can see sometimes just a short quote on Instagram. But as long as we maintain the link to the whole of the teachings through our articles and through our posts, then that's the way for people to be able to discover the entirety of it. So I think they work together. So you have the depth of the material, and then you have the different doors and the different ways to get to know the material. And as I said, I think the important thing is to focus on the content of what people are interested in out there. For example, loneliness. The moment that COVID hit, we noticed that loneliness was a big issue. We noticed that on our online programs. One of them had that title. You can see all these people signing up, the quotes and the videos. So then we kind of, create the content around those kind of topics.
Yeah. Maybe I can add one thing, and because I otherwise maybe it's under. You don't realize that easily. Like 10 years ago, if you would like to introduce somebody to Krishnamurti, a young person, 14 years old, 15 years old, or maybe 18 years old, and if you just put them in front of a 1.5 hour Krishnamurti tape, first of all, they get the feeling that you're trying to sell this person to them, which is not. And second of all, you have to go through quite a bit of material to start to understand what he's talking about. So we try to, for those entry points, really to remove the man, as Francisco said, and just try to really put bits in where Krishnamurti particularly speaks to a certain topic that a person who is in their 20s or in their 80s are interested in. So it's quite an art form to get that going, because you don't want to distort also, right? You don't want to suddenly make it sellable, but you want to have these short moments. And I mean, I don't know, but I had many experiences where whole families come to the East End, to the center, and the wife is interested in Krishnamurti, the husband is tagging along, and the kids are tagging along, and oh yeah, she wants to see Krishnamurti. And then if I just show them a short clip, they suddenly realize, oh yeah, that's what mom is interested in. Before they don't, because it's very difficult to convey within a family, if one is interested, to convey what are you interested about? Why are you so interested in that man? So it's just, I've seen many of these accounts where you can see that if you find other entry points, and it's successful. Yeah.
One thing that maybe I think for me it was useful to see. So I was born in Argentina, and in my 20s I remember I was just walking down a street and I saw an old poster with a quote of Krishnamurti, and I couldn't even see his face. I think it was all there were posters on top of each other, and it was like a quote that I can't even remember which one it was, but that led me to being here now. So that's like a piece of information, that you can say it's marketing, and somehow, such a small thing that now will be an Instagram post or something like that, right? So that's exactly what we're trying to reproduce.
Yeah, and also, that Instagram post now has all the information. So it may be that one quote, but they have that person has the ability to read the entire transcript from where that quote comes from, if they would like to.
And how successful do you feel are we in social media? How is it going? Let me put it that way.
Yeah, so since the dissemination plan has started last July, which was 10 months ago, we've doubled our Instagram subscriber account. TikTok, which we've recently started, has grown from 0 to over 25,000 followers, and almost 90,000 people have interacted with those videos. Clubhouse, we have almost 200 users that follow the account, and even more people who, for whatever reason, don't follow, but they engage with the content. So I would say it's not only successful, but definitely needed. I mean, there's a lot of people online, and especially now with, some of the precautions people have been taking, people really need this, I think.
Are there any do's or don'ts that you use when you're creating your content for online, for your social media?
Yeah, I think it's just to keep the integrity of the teachings. And just to, it's not really, there's none of me or any of us in it. It's just presenting this information to, people who are on Instagram or on Facebook or whatever platform they resonate with. And it's just being where people are at. But I would say that's just the major do, is just to keep the integrity and also provide all those different entry points, like Francisco was saying, and have the information easily accessible and just also, fun. We want people to want to engage with this content.
Is there something you will not do? Let me like some ideas that come up, or something, the things that are rejected. I mean, I'm guessing that might be of interest.
So in the online space and marketing or dissemination, there can be the temptation to make something salesy. Yeah. Like, get this now, or we're never gonna have this again. But that's it's generally not true. I think we typically have our books available and whatever it is that we promote. And I mean, there's that fine line there, right, between offering the information, but we're not really selling people or anything. So it does go against what I would call traditional marketing, which is very salesy. It has all these different tactics that we don't employ.
Yeah, the one that you mentioned is the one about scarcity, right? That you can see the moment you start analyzing out there, it's like everything is limited, and everything is only 80 books left, and do it now. Right. So we don't do any of that. And another aspect that maybe is interesting that we realized, or we think there is some correlation with the fact that when we started looking at different authors out there, just to see what they were doing, and also why the videos were doing really well. For example, on YouTube, you have somebody like Alan Watts, that the videos that have many millions of views, and the Krishnamurti ones is a little less somehow. And with other people, there seems to be a pattern. And it looks to me, or to us, that partly Krishnamurti's message it doesn't comfort you at the beginning. And that's like an important piece that it has to be there, of course, because that's the core of the teachings, right? He will tell you, you are the world, meaning that you are part of this mess, right? While other authors, and you see these huge views coming there, they go more for, you are the universe, meaning, like some kind of, existential connection, which is probably true, but Krishnamurti, I feel like he's focusing on that aspect that we are trying to avoid, and the aspect that make us feel all these defenses. So there is some challenge there for us.
I have a Can you go to the mic? I'm sorry, just so the online audience can hear you, or else they've been asking us, they can't hear you.
Well, my question is that what kind of so you identify topics, right, for which you want to create the videos that you create to open doors, as you said. So I'm curious, like, what kind of research goes into that in terms of understanding behavior or what is needed at that moment? So I'm just curious, and then how do you like kind of create the videos? That just curious.
So it can be from different. There are different ways of trying to get data from people. But for example, by looking at a website, the search function, you can see a little bit like what was happening there, right? Like, why are people looking for fear or something like that? Or the other way to do that we have done is we upload different videos on the major topics: love, fear, loneliness, and then you can see how organically people are drawn to one because the views are going up, right? So then we can continue to explore that theme. But ultimately, I think our function is to have everything available, right? It's more like if we want.
So you're kind of using social media for social media.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and people also tell us, what they need too. Sometimes we'll have a lot of comments asking about has Krishnamurti said anything about relationships? So they'll directly ask us as well. Mm-hmm.
Good.
I don't know if this is too out there or not, but I've been working on a writing project for the last year or so based on Bruce Lee's Tao of Jeet Kune Do. And one thing that's really become apparent to me is that he was a big Krishnamurti fan, to the point where there are passages almost lifted directly out of it. Would you be willing to work with maybe the Bruce Lee Foundation or something like that in order to gain more like eyes on, basically? That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a tricky question. I think informally, of course, we're always willing to work, but and of course, I mean, the amount of people that I have met that have got an interest in Krishnamurti because of Bruce Lee, and the video. There's one particular video on YouTube on Bruce Lee, which is, so many people have actually found Krishnamurti through that particular video. But I think there's something about, and I'm not saying a definitely yes or no, but there's something about that Krishnamurti has to have his own voice and has to stand separately, not because out of arrogance, but more that you don't want, it's a particular, it's aligned with other things, it needs to have its own separate voice. But as far as informally working together, we do actually many projects with other places. I mean, maybe Corey, maybe you want to say something about a pending project of, or not yet. Okay, okay, good. So, but there are projects that are pending.
Something cannot be said yet.
Hi, talking about universe. You talk about that word. I am wondering, what is your experience with university library in the United States? University libraries, School of Education, for instance. Do you have any access to them? I mean, do you talk with them? Do you present this Krishnamurti Foundation of America, the teaching, etc.? And if you had that experience, what is your experience with the university libraries? Because there is talking about marketing, quote unquote. That's it.
Well, I can only answer partly, but it's only somewhat indirect. But we do. I mean, in terms of the archives, we do partner with other archives. We've partnered with the California State Library, who has also granted and helped us with digitization of California-related material. So a whole selection of talks from Santa Monica and San Diego were redigitized in high resolution by the California State Library. I've also worked with she's now left, but we've partnered with UCLA. They had a library science program, and they asked us to come and speak about oral history archives. So, and also work with the Huntington Library, which has its own Krishnamurti archive. So yes, we have partnerships, particularly on the archive end. With the library question, it's a little more open. You know, certain libraries do have Krishnamurti books, and it has been a project that's been proposed that we partner more directly to make sure that Krishnamurti libraries and regional library or local libraries have Krishnamurti material, but that is a bit more of like a possible project.
Yeah. I know like some people, particular people in particular universities, when they have an interest, they come and ask me, and we always supply. So when, but we haven't. It's actually very difficult to find to identify the right person to contact within a particular organization who is in charge of making that call, and that's in itself a whole research project, you know. But we supply whenever a university asks us for books. Yeah.
I think just one more point along these lines is just to illustrate that the archives are the world of archives is a very friendly place, and many people, including friends of Ram Dass, contact the Krishnamurti Foundation because they want to know what it entails to open and maintain an archive. I've also worked with members of Esalen Institute who've contacted us and had questions about what it looks like. So we're connected to many archives that we share information with and strategies for how to preserve. So yeah, it's just nice to know that it's not an isolated institution. It's very connected to people in all kinds of organizations. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to come to the front? People want to hear. You're going to be on camera.
Two things. One is, are we going to hear about other programs that the Krishnamurti Foundation is doing, maybe potential new learning centers and that kind of thing in this session?
Yes, I'm going to...
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I have a little odd, quirky thing that was brought up by... there's a former student named Hank Okazaki who went to Rutgers, and he somehow there created this Hong Kong cinema, I don't know if it's archives or program or what, and he was a fan when he was a young student here of Bruce Lee, and I'm wondering if you know anything about that, if anybody even in the audience knows anything about that. No. Okay. So maybe you could tell us about these other
centers.
programs. Yes, thank you.
Yes. So Corey, yeah, in your capacity as director, so actually maybe that's also a good. So the Krishnamurti Foundation has about 9 staff, and so we all wear many different hats. You know, I mean, so so Corey is also well, Francisco, director of the center and of marketing, and Corey is the director of the new center. So he can maybe say something. This may be a good moment to speak about the new center.
Yeah, so we've shared some information, but just to bring everyone here up to speed, the sort of at the beginning of the pandemic, the foundation received a very generous gift of an estate in Northern California. It's the address is in the town of Occidental, California. It's about an hour and a half north of San Francisco. And the foundation looked at and agreed to accept the donation, on the one hand, just because we know that there is a very large group of people in the Bay Area, wide Bay Area, that have an interest in Krishnamurti, and would be potentially interested in having a center there. So we have been slowly working on transforming a 17-acre property with a gorgeous garden and very remarkable structure building, which was essentially a private residence, into a new public Krishnamurti center. Some of the work that's happened so far, the man that donated the property. His name was Jim Dixon, and he was a garden designer. That was one of his primary vocations, but he also was a very, very passionate carpet and art collector. So we've been working on processing around 2,500 unique art objects that we inventoried and had to offload because it's not the job of the foundation to maintain a museum quality art collection. But I mean, I guess the thing to convey, and I think the spirit of the acceptance of the donation, is that the place itself is very remarkable. And Jim thought that the foundation would be the appropriate receiver of the gift to open a center that focused on Center for Study and Contemplation, Exploration of Consciousness. He was very, very passionate about Krishnamurti's work. And I think you get a sense of that in the way that he designed the gardens and the property itself. So our work now is to take what he's done with the place and to, turn it into a place where people can come and really sort of sincerely study and look at the teachings. There's really no way to indicate what the place is, but I think that the most captivating part of it is something about Jim's interest and awareness of the experience of beauty. And I think that being there and being a part of that space there is what we're going to try to avail ourselves of when we open the new center. Give people an opportunity to go into a very sort of natural, beautiful setting that can be quiet and open to reflection. So I think it's very, very exciting. In terms of visiting, it will look different. There's not the same kind of accommodation that we have here at the center. So we'll probably be starting with day visits, which is still very, very enjoyable. So I mean, that's a very open, broad explanation, but we're excited and enthusiastic, and so just stay tuned for more.
Good. You want to say something?
If you'd like to continue, I'll wait.
No, because I'm going to a new topic after this.
This is a good time, actually. Thank you. First of all, I just want to say thanks to, of course, Kay, for being here, I guess, and being present in a beautiful way for multiple decades, and to inspire the world the way he did. But I also want to acknowledge and thank all the people that recognized the beauty, and some of them are here multiple decades, and in many different institutions, and people have come far, far away. And for me, I just noticed in this beautiful 2-day annual May gathering that it's been beautiful. It's just transformative, and it's been amazing. Mark and David and all others, Leah, and the music, Carolina, Maria, and the dialogues. It's just been, I think, amazing. So in terms of the intent behind the gathering, where I feel that we've definitely given many, many opportunities. And when you said you can check them at the end of the door if they've got it, I think many of us probably did. There are a few things that I actually heard Mark mention, David mentioned, and there are words that I feel they are slippery slopes, and I feel that it's incumbent on us to negate those things. And I just found that the word Krishnamurti followers, the phrase. And I just wonder, why have we not challenged that and to immediately arrest that drip of water and seal that bucket? That's one. The other thing is, even though it is K who articulated and shared and dedicated this to people who said, call it the teachings and, be there, okay, foundation, etc. He actively worked to create the vacuum, and that the focus was, the entire life's work was about the decay of humanity and this crisis. And he was always, he was referring to the speaker actively for decades. And so I feel that while it's valuable for the KFA, and I'm sharing this not just to this panel, but also for us as a society and as us as a community, just like the Constitution had explicit instructions on what is okay, protected, etc., and judges, Supreme Court articulate and interpret the unenumerated rights, etc., that we have to piece together, there is also something unsaid. And it's incumbent on us in this 2022 May, while wars are being waged, that there are some things that we need to transcend, even from where K defined it. And I think that there is a general mission that core, maybe this Occidental Redwood Center might be the place, that it's not about K, it's not about Jim Dixon, and it's not about the teachings. And we are able to define that. I'm just sharing this as a, is it possible for us to explore that as an availability and to seek in and say, after all, it's San Francisco area, Occidental, Northern California. And so I'm just wondering if it's possible to at least begin a new era of learnings, and not just from what something came by from before, from India or anything, but about how this process of children here and other schools and other places go from this blissful balls of laughter and joy and then suddenly end up like us. And I hope that would be compelling, and that would bring Vladimir Putin to listen and say, what's going on there? And so I'm just giving an example, but I hope that there's something that is universal about the work we do, and at least in a way, focus ourselves exclusively with just that and nothing else. And everything else is noise. Everything about K and teachings and the foundation, if we call that noise, and then the process that we articulated beautifully by David and Siddhartha, what if there's a way in which it's poetry, just pure poetic transformation, and that's all that we are interested in. So thank you. I appreciate it. It's been joyful. Thank you.
Thank you.
In China, they call it Krishnamurti readers, not followers. It's readers. I like that term better. I'm just to say a few things. And then I'm going to go to you because I know you want to ask a question previous time. So I'm going to make sure that it's going to happen. No, but it's actually really a challenge, of course, right? I mean, in its essence, you're right by saying Krishnamurti is pointing at something which has to be universal in order to be valuable, right? So somehow you could look at all his work without Krishnamurti or even without his teaching. But I think from the framework of the foundations, of course, it's the teachings that are central as a starting point. But it's up to us to remember that it's the universal factor that is really the central fact of all this. So I don't know. I mean, I can. You want to say something? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's the most important aspect, I feel like, to be aware that the teachings are pointing at something universal, and then it does seem that it's in us to actually honor that, because when you look at the text, even the whole thing about followers or not, the teachings have that built in. All the disclaimers are there all the time. This is not a lecture. There's no method. I'm not your guru, spiritual authority. So it's all there. And I guess for us as a staff is like, can we somehow, when we are creating a center or have this the atmosphere that should be there as a Krishnamurti center, how to in a way honor that and how not to bring anything that could, in practical terms, what does it mean to actually have that manifested in a center, right? And it's a living thing, and it's a constant questioning of our actions. But I think, as I said, if you go back to the source has all the things that we do. The things that we feel like we are not meant to be doing. Let me put it like that. It's wrongly put, but if you know what I mean, it's all there. It's like somehow we are not taking this on in a way.
Please.
I just want to sort of directly, because you mentioned, so there's perhaps a possibility in building a new center to look at these things, and I would say that as best we can as staff walking into a space, this is a very real question. What does it take in designing or putting together a place that is a sincere invitation to the kind of passion that was in your question? It's very hard to answer, but I think at least approaching it with the question is giving us an opportunity to look at it, because it is genuine, and I think that is why we wanted to take on the opportunity to see what kind of possibilities are there. But it's a much easier question, much harder to answer.
Good.
Okay. To address your poetry idea, and when I saw that focus was on poetry, I did wonder if there was time for reflection, all of us to reflect together, and for everyone's voices to be heard. So I wondered if that was going to happen, and I thought, it probably won't. So I had a thought and an idea, and that was to do a group poem together, where each person offers a piece of the poem, and the poem, the questions are, who are you? What are you looking for? And what are your reflections on today and how it was set up and how it went, and for you, your reflections, if you felt frustrated, what you loved about it. So these things, and to do quick poems, so it would take 15 minutes, a quick go around, so we get everybody's voice in a circle. And then also, what would Kay say? The energy that Kay was, is, and is going into the future. What would that energy say? And do a round of that. So that was a thought, and I wanted to make it happen. I was like, ooh, we could make this happen. I talked to a lot of people, and and I think part of it was my frustrations. I wanted to address my frustrations, and I did get them addressed, and I spoke with people, and I was able to see I could continue. There's groups happening, here. I could go to those groups. I could share and get to the bottom of those frustrations. But I sense that there are others with similar frustrations, and I would love to hear about that, especially related to now and here and what has transpired this weekend. So, it's just, it's a thought.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we will do that circle, but what we can do is, that we have 10 minutes left. I mean, there's, it would be great. I mean, if anybody wants to come to the mic, just tell us how you're doing and how you feel and how you're...
I'll say one more thing, and maybe in the future, in terms of your new center, it would be really cool to do things in a circle. And we've gotten away from it as a people. I think it's helpful to get back to the circle, definitely.
Thank you.
Hi, Jaap, really appreciated your nice program today. And for the 2 days, it's wonderful, it's energizing, and there's really some energy that is just beyond the word. I can't describe it. But coming to the question of the new center and what any organization like this one, what is desirable or not, and if the trustees and you want to hear about input from people like me, I have something to say on that, and that is what what Krishnamurti did in terms of his, whatever you call the strategic plan or the write-up to keep his teachings pure, I think in the long term is really the best way. And the reason I'm saying that is I have seen too many Indian gurus or whatever you call that, teachers, who after sometimes 3 years after they are gone, when there was not an edict like this, like what Krishnamurti said, where after 10 years you can barely recognize what is being said in their name, interpretation and interpretation of interpretation. And personally, I feel that some of the biggest religions of the world, for example, Buddha said, you should not even listen to the speaker, just like Kay did. But today Buddha is getting worshipped. And similarly, I have seen the same thing. Some of the original documents may not be there, but even about Christianity, Jesus Christ may not have wanted himself to be worshipped in the way he is. He wanted to focus on the teaching. So I think it will be excellent if whatever projects, centers you come, you stay with this, and that will be the best thing I can think of. And the other thing is, of course, whether any one center can, or any one teaching can replicate the whole universe of all teaching. It's like a university. The whole world is like a university. Any one microcosm cannot try to replicate everything. So yes, there are other teachers, there are other principles, and people may not all be exclusive followers of any one master, and that's fine, but at least keeping it this way, it will keep it sacred. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, I want to express my appreciation for having an in-person meeting after all this time. It's just been such a treat. And I really appreciated especially Habib's talk about war and his knowledge about groups and the dynamics of that on individual, but applying some of Maslow's pyramid scheme to groups. So that was just phenomenal for me in this time. And then also the, how would I say it? Well, also I have to just say, being in this absolutely phenomenal environment with other living, breathing human beings who we could interact with and share with and learn from. It was just amazing. And there was this wonderful woman, your aunt, who is a phenomenal nonviolent communication speaker, and I beg you to please sponsor her in having some sort of a forum where we can come together and learn those precious techniques in conflict and communication skills. What else can I say? The environment, the other people, and of course the teachings. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I also want to thank you, everybody, for being here, and thank you for showing me the library. And I was pretty impressed with all the collections there. I didn't get a chance to sit and read about it, but I feel like I have been on this journey of self-exploration and observation for a while. And only 1 month ago, I embarked on the book of Krishnamurti, The Complete Freedom, and that's how I got here. But it's more like I think we should not be missing out on what he's pointing towards. We should not get lost into his teachings. But he's pointing towards something which we have a lot of names for that, which can be truth or Brahman, consciousness. So he's pointing to that. And he's pointing towards that oneness, which is we are all one at the level of consciousness. We might feel like we are separate from the physical body, but he is pointing towards that Brahman. And I think we should just see how to get there, because it's not a technique, it's through self-inquiry. But we have to develop that kind of a meditative mind to even understand what he's saying. So somehow we have to see how to get there as far as collective consciousness. So that's what my thing is. If you guys have any idea or anything, I would like, but the Krishnamurti's teachings are really pointing towards something, and that's the main thing. And I call that, just in the words to describe it, it's like sound of silence, which I feel that there is some screen behind, which is more like a silence. And out of that, all the answers are coming. So Krishnamurti, I think, is pointing towards that there is a silence inside, and you can feel it. And out of that backdrop, all the activity is coming. So sometimes we are not calm enough to get there. And we are just seeing the superficial waves. So main thing I have realized is there is an ocean of consciousness, and we think we are the waves, and we get identified with the wave form, like, small, big, but we are always connected to that consciousness.
Don't make it too long.
Yeah. So I feel that's what he's pointing towards.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So don't get lost in the teachings, just see what he's pointing to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
I'll keep it quick. So I'm going to echo the gratitude that everyone here has expressed. So thank you. I stumbled on Facebook. I stumbled upon a quote. I didn't know anything about Krishnamurti like a month ago, and I stumbled upon a quote that said something about don't throw away your suffering, and I'm like, what? Why? But anyway, so that's how I got deeper into this, and here I am. So for someone like me who's just learning or beginning to open the door, are there a couple of books of the 120 that you can maybe recommend to get into this, I guess? And the second thing is the 2-day. I know we have a live stream going on, but is there a place where I can access this video so I can dig deeper into the things that interest me?
If you go to the website, there's a link, and you can see the whole recording is there, all the different programs, and you can watch them at your leisure.
So our KFA.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so that's the answer to the second question. A
The
couple
fir-
of books
So,
recommendations.
well, I mean, on the top of my head, Freedom from the Known,
Freedom.
First and Last Freedom, Commentaries
Yeah.
on Living, yeah.
Mm.
So then you
What was the third one?
Commentaries on Living,
Commentaries on. Okay.
yeah, 3 volumes.
Okay. I think
That's
that
good
should-
start.
That should
Good
keep me
enough.
busy for a while. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I think that's the last one. If anybody else wants to celebrate or mourn.
Oh.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, we have one online. Now we close with an online.
Is a community based in a feeling of fellowship to also be considered an organization? Is a community based in a feeling of fellowship to also be considered an organization?
Francisco, I mean,
How
I
do
don't
you
know.
define fellowship?
Select something that you can answer.
Does fellowship mean being with somebody?
Yeah, I don't know. I am trying to understand the question.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
All right.
Good. So then we close with your answer. Yeah.
Oh, I just got.
Yeah. There is this new thought in management of companies, also in corporations, that such a flat structures that don't have defined roles and authorities are actually much more efficient. And so this new line of thought in management is called turquoise organizations, right? So the answer is yes, and let's say there's a growing consensus that they can be even more efficient.
Good. Great, thank you. Thank you.
And I
very
can
much.
elaborate on that.
So in that sense, you're saying that kind of organizational structure is what is being referred to as fellowship. I'm just trying to understand the relationship.
Yeah, that's how I understood the question. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if you want to close, you have to close. Otherwise, it's gonna.
Yeah, so that's.
It's
Yes,
by
so-
5, and we have to respect time. So
Yes, so thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much
everyone
for the-
online.
Thank you. I just looked it up. It means friendly association, especially with people who share one's interests.